Hello and welcome to the program. Today we bring you the latest on Donald Trump's forthcoming inauguration as well as France's pushback of Israel. We've got the latest on all these stories and more, but first, a look at the headlines. FBI Director Christopher Wray says he will step down at the end of the President Joe Biden's term next month. President-elect Donald Trump, who appointed Wray to the post, calls the resignation a great day for America. Israeli forces conduct their first withdrawal from southern Lebanon under a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. The Israeli military says it will continue, however, to operate against any threats in the wake of previous truce violations. Taiwan detects 16 Chinese warships and 34 aircraft around the island. This as Beijing holds its largest military drills around the self-governed island and even near the southern islands of Japan. South Korean police attempt a second raid on President Yoon Suk-yeol's presidential compound, a day after security guards blocked a similar raid. The opposition vows to file legal complaints for insurrection against Yoon's staff. And Australia plans to impose new rules that would force big tech firms like Google and Meta to pay local publishers for news content or face the risk of paying millions to continue operations in the country. We begin in the United States, where President-elect Donald Trump has reportedly invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend his inauguration in January. A CBS News report quoting multiple sources says the invitation was extended to Xi shortly after Donald Trump won the presidential election in November. Now it's unclear whether Beijing has accepted the invitation, as the Chinese embassy in Washington has yet to make any comments. The CBS report also says inauguration officials are planning to host additional foreign heads of state.
World leaders are lining up to meet with President Trump because they know he will soon return to power and restore peace through American strength around the globe.
There is also a possibility of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban attending Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th as well. Hungary's far-right leader shares a close relationship with the president-elect and even visited Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago estate just this week. Meanwhile, reports say China appears to be unlikely to accept the invitation due to historical precedents and diplomatic protocols. Until now, no Chinese head of state has ever attended the inauguration of any American president. And since taking power, Xi Jinping has always sent a special representative to attend such ceremonies. Moreover, it typically takes months of preparations before a Chinese president visits the United States. Washington doesn't have a history of hosting heads of state for the presidential inauguration. Instead, the invitation is usually extended to foreign dignitaries and diplomats. Now, the report of Donald Trump's invitation to Xi comes days after he called on China to help broker a truce between Russia and Ukraine.
Close to 600,000 Russian soldiers lay wounded or dead in a war that should never have started and could go on forever. Zelensky and Ukraine would like to make a deal and stop the madness. They have ridiculously lost 400,000 soldiers and many more civilians. There should be an immediate ceasefire and negotiations should begin. Too many lives are being so needlessly wasted, too many families destroyed, and if it keeps going, it can turn into something much bigger and far worse. I know Vladimir well. This is his time to act. China can help. The world is waiting.
However, before this latest olive branch, the president-elect repeatedly warned China of hefty tariffs, a threat Beijing fears could ignite a brutal trade war.
And we'll also pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act, meaning if China or any other country is charging us 100 or 200% tariff or tax, then we will charge them 100 or 200% tariff or tax in return. In other words, it's an eye for an eye. And when that happens, everything will just go away. And I will never apologize for defending America. I will protect our workers. I will protect our jobs. I will protect our borders. I will protect our families.
Now, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping last met back in 2019 on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Japan. Now it's unclear if Xi Jinping will in fact make an exception for President-elect Donald Trump's return, who is already being treated as an incumbent by world leaders. And now to the Middle East, where France has called on Israel to withdraw its forces from the Golan demilitarized zone and respect Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The appeal follows Israeli troops entering the buffer zone near the Golan Heights, which is a violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement brokered by the United Nations. The French Foreign Ministry emphasized that any military deployment in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria is a violation, urging Israel to honor its commitments.
As stated by the UN, any military deployment in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria is a violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement, which must be respected by its signatories, Israel and Syria. France reiterates its full support for the UN Disengagement Observer Force in the Golan, whose security must be maintained. France calls on Israel to withdraw from this area and to respect Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Now, alongside France, the United Nations has also echoed these concerns, warning both Israel and Syria against breaching the terms of the accord.
We are continuing to see Israeli movements and bombardments into Syrian territory. This needs to stop. This is extremely important. Let me then just give what I would call 3 key messages. We need to continue to stress the protection of civilians. This means that there needs to be what I call orderly arrangements. But it also means, and this of course, I don't need to repeat it, but it's extremely important, it needs to be inclusive arrangements. That is ensuring the representation of the broadest possible spectrum of the Syrian society and the Syrian parties.
The situation escalated after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that Israeli defense forces entered the buffer zone to address potential security threats arising from Syria's growing instability, as rebel groups seized Damascus, forcing Syria's former president Bashar al-Assad to flee to Moscow.
After the fall of the regime in Damascus, Hamas is more isolated than ever. It hoped for the consolidation of the arenas. Instead, it got the disintegration of the arenas. And the State of Israel is establishing its position as a center of power in our region as it has not been for decades. We want to see a different Syria, both for our benefit and for the benefit of the people of Syria.
Now, in addition to the ground deployment, Israel has also carried out hundreds of airstrikes targeting Syrian military installations, chemical weapons stockpiles, and missile sites. However, these actions have left the international community divided. While Russia and Saudi Arabia have criticized the Israeli operations, the United States has offered its support.
The United States fully supports a Syrian-led and Syrian-owned political transition that leads to credible, inclusive, and non-sectarian governance, and made clear that the United States will recognize and fully support a future Syrian government that results from this process.
The actions of the Israeli armed forces, which have occupied the buffer zone in the Golan area and a number of adjacent areas, obviously violate the terms of the Syrian-Israeli agreement on the separation of forces from 1974. These military actions obviously do not serve the task of stabilizing the situation in Syria, and on the contrary, they further aggravate the already extremely difficult situation that has developed in recent days in this country.
Now, as the region teeters on the edge of further conflict, the question remains just how far is Israel willing to go to secure its borders, and how the world will respond to the growing instability in the Middle East. And now, from conflict in the Middle East to conflict in Europe, Russia has accused Ukraine of using Western-supplied missiles to attack a military field located in the country's southwestern region. The Russian Defense Ministry said Kyiv fired at least 6 Army tactical missile systems supplied by the United States. Now, Moscow is vowing retaliation for the strike, saying the long-range missile attack will not go unanswered.
On the morning of December 11th, 2024, the Kyiv regime launched a missile strike with Western precision weapons at the Tagan Rock military airfield in the Rostov region. This attack by Western long-range weapons will not go unanswered, and appropriate measures will be taken.
Russia says all 6 missiles were either shot down or intercepted, and their debris caused minimal damage. Meanwhile, officials at the Pentagon raised the alarm that Kyiv's further use of these weapons could prompt Moscow to launch another intermediate-range ballistic missile at Ukraine. The missile called Oroshenk was first launched at the Ukrainian city of Dnipro last month, after Kyiv used the same U.S.-supplied weapons to strike Russian territory for the first time. Vladimir Putin claims the new missile is impossible to intercept and has destructive powers just short of being a nuclear weapon.
Напомню еще раз. Напомню, как Орешник работает, как вы и просили.
Let me remind you once again how the Oreshnik works, since you've asked. Dozens of warheads, homing warheads, attack the target at a speed of 10 Machs, which is about 3 kilometers per second. The temperature of the striking elements reaches 4,000 degrees. If my memory serves me right, the temperature on the surface of the sun is 5.5 to 6,000 degrees. Therefore, everything that is in the epicenter of the explosion is divided into fractions, into elementary particles, essentially turned into dust. As has already been said, we will respond to the ongoing strikes on Russian territory by Western-made long-range missiles, including by possibly continuing to test the Oreshnik in combat conditions, as was done on November 21st. At present, the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff of the Russian Army are selecting targets to hit on Ukrainian territory. These could be military facilities, defense industry enterprises, or decision-making centers in Kyiv.
On Wednesday, Putin discussed the war on a call with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The call was reportedly initiated at the request of Orban, who casts himself as a possible mediator in his self-styled Ukraine peace mission. However, the Hungarian leader move drew the ire of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In a social media post, President Zelensky slammed Orban for undermining Western unity and mocked him for boosting his personal image.
It's absolutely clear that achieving real peace and guaranteed security requires America's determination, Europe's unity, and the unwavering commitment of all partners to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. No one should boost personal image at the expense of unity. Everyone should focus on shared success. Unity in Europe has always been key to achieving it. There can be no discussions about the war that Russia wages against Ukraine without Ukraine.
Orban responded, emphasizing the Ukrainian leaders seem to have no interest in a ceasefire by Christmas.
At the end of the Hungarian EU presidency, we made new efforts for peace. We proposed a Christmas ceasefire and a large-scale prisoner exchange. It's sad that President Zelensky clearly rejected and ruled this out today. We did what we could.
Notably, Orban is the only European leader who shares close ties with both President-elect Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin. And in Iran, freedom comes at a deadly cost. A woman's choice to unveil can now lead to flogging, prison, and even execution. The new hijab law enforces harsh penalties for those who defy strict dress codes. Iranian women, however, refuse to back down, with their courage shining amid repression. Our next report explores their fight, the systemic control they endure, and the hope they ignite.
In the shadowed streets of Tehran, a young woman pulls off her headscarf, letting her hair cascade freely in the breeze. As she steps into the public eye, she knows the risk, she knows the price, yet for a fleeting moment, she feels alive, reclaiming a freedom long denied. In Iran, women's bodies have become battlegrounds for control. Their right to choose is stripped away. Patriarchy dictates their lives. But each strand of unveiled hair has now become a silent scream against oppression. And now, a new law looms over them, imposing severe penalties for defying hijab mandates. The legislation promotes the culture of chastity and hijab, enforcing strict dress codes and criminalizing dissent. Women who unveil will face fines of up to $15,700, flogging, and at least 15 years of imprisonment. In some cases, death sentences loom, turning acts of personal choice into crimes punishable by death.
The international community must not stand idly by as Iranian authorities further codify repression and even resort to the death penalty to suppress dissent against compulsory veiling. They must use their leverage to press the Iranian authorities to withdraw this law and abolish compulsory veiling in law and practice. They must also pursue legal pathways to hold Iranian officials accountable for committing widespread and systematic human rights violations against women and girls through the implementation of compulsory veiling.
But this is not all. The law also extends its reach, emboldening public harassment. Iran's Article 60 will now punish any attempt to stop such harassment, making defenders of women's rights criminals themselves.
Nearly all provisions of this law contravene fundamental principles, such as Article 9 of the Iranian Constitution, which prohibits legislation that undermines citizens' freedoms, even in the name of national sovereignty. The law stipulates lengthy prison sentences for those persistently opposing mandatory hijab and encouraging others to do the same.
Businesses and institutions are not spared either. Taxi drivers, schools, and broadcasters must report non-compliance. Failure to act will invite fines and punishment. This crackdown follows the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022, when her death in custody ignited a firestorm of protests. Iranian women, fueled by grief and rage, defied dress codes in acts of bravery. Videos of their resistance spread like wildfire. Recently, a young student stripped down to her underwear in protest. She was later taken to a psychiatric hospital, her defiance punished with cruelty. Since the incident, authorities have imposed hijab clinics to treat defiant women. The move has sparked outrage, further deepening societal tensions.
This allowed for our voices to be heard by the world. What us girls did made this movement into something that continues. Now, all over the country, women are protesting the compulsory hijab in any way they can. I definitely think it made a difference.
Since the implementation, even Iranian leaders expressed unease. President Masoud Pezeshkian warned of growing discontent. Critics argue the law's enforcement will deepen unrest because the regime's grip on power is challenged by the courage of its women. For now, Iranian women are waging a battle against a relentless hierarchy of control. They plead that the silence of the international community must come to an end because oppressors thrive on indifference. They declare that women deserve lives free from tyranny. Their rights are non-negotiable and their fight is far from over.
And finally, we couldn't end without addressing Elon Musk. The Tesla CEO has hit a new milestone, becoming the first person in history to surpass a net worth of $400 billion. Now, this is fueled by his SpaceX shares sale and a record Tesla stock prices. Musk's wealth tied to ventures like Tesla and SpaceX continues to grow despite him courting numerous controversies. Here's our report detailing his rise in wealth.
His rocket company is the only reason we can now send America.
Elon Musk, the world's foremost poster child for unfiltered tweets and eye-raising business antics, is back in the headlines. Not for promising to genetically engineer a baby for Taylor Swift or rekindling his love affair with marijuana on a podcast, but for a feat that even monopoly tycoons might envy. His net worth has soared past a jaw-dropping $447 billion. Yes, that's 11 zeros. Thanks to a conveniently timed insider share sale of his privately held space juggernaut SpaceX, Musk pocketed an extra $50 billion. This little boost, paired with Tesla shares rocketing to an all-time high of $424.77, pushed his estimated net worth to an eye-watering $447 billion. This is as per the Bloomberg Billionaire Index. Now, Musk occupies the gilded throne on the list. The next milestone for his net worth is a trillionaire badge. Musk's treasure chest isn't the result of just one golden goose, he's got a whole flock. His sprawling empire includes Tesla, the electric vehicle pioneer, SpaceX, the rocket launcher, a tunnel construction business called The Boring Company, brain chip startup Neuralink, X, formerly known as Twitter, and his latest artificial intelligence venture called XAI. SpaceX alone accounted for $82 billion of Musk's wealth before the recent sale. XAI, the newcomer, has already mushroomed in value to $50 billion, fueled by fundraising and Musk's relentless AI hype. Tesla, meanwhile, has become the glittering gold of his portfolio. Its shares buoyed by the expectation that the new Donald Trump administration will have friendly policies. Investors are betting on Musk's Tesla as if it can save the planet by electric vehicles alone. This has made it a golden ticket for Musk under the guise of environmentalism, conveniently ignoring his environmental footprint from endless rocket launches. However, Musk's triumphs aren't just the result of his supposed genius or daring bets. They're also underwritten by, you guessed it, US tax dollars. SpaceX has raked in nearly $20 billion in federal contracts since the year 2008, largely from NASA and the Department of Defense. Trump's cozy relationship with Musk doesn't hurt either. Musk is a co-chair of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, an ironic title if there ever was one. He's going to get benefits from federal policies that conveniently align with his corporate interests. SpaceX, for example, enjoyed the president-elect's vocal support for missions to Mars, a cause that Musk has marketed as humanity's last hope. But it could just as easily be his retirement plan. Musk's meteoric rise came after a turbulent 2022, when Tesla stock plummeted, wiping out between $180 billion and $200 billion from his fortune. Lesser billionaires might have taken a moment to lick their wounds, but not Musk. He's proof that the rich don't just bounce back. They slingshot into the stratosphere, powered by investor optimism, government subsidies, and of course, relentless self-promotion. Elon Musk's ascent is a masterclass in the art of leveraging public funds, investor fantasies, and a media machine eager to amplify his every move. Love him or loathe him, he's the quintessential modern billionaire. Brash, unrelenting, and seemingly untouchable. His story is one of audacity and absurdity. A saga that leaves people asking, how much richer can one man get?
That's our show for today. We thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office is imminent. He will soon take the oath of office and once again lead the nation.
God spared my life for a reason.
President-elect Donald Trump's first priority tackling illegal immigration and securing the nation's borders.
We're going to fix our borders.
The incoming administration has prioritized the Russia-Ukraine war. Can they succeed in ending one of the world's most challenging conflicts?
I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled.
And as he returns to the White House, will Donald Trump resume a bruising trade war with the world's second largest economy, China?
If China or some other country is behaving badly, we have things called tariffs.
All of this and more right here on Firstpost America.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual on Firstpost, where we get you the top 50 stories from around the world. I'm Alison